G'day everyone, welcome back to Rule of Reason. I've got another guest for you today, Trent, who is with me, and rather than waste any time with an introduction, I'll let him introduce himself. Trent, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for that, Zach.
Mate, we'll get straight into it.
Yep.
Let's start with perhaps anything you think is prudent for your backstory.
Well, look, basically, grew up in Brizzy, and I was sort of probably, an average, kid, and always had a passion though for aviation, and ever since, sort of at the old airport in Brisbane there, watching the old Lufthansa and Pan Am and TAA Ansett jets fly in, and today, now work for Qantas, and for me, I'm living my dream.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So, what kid growing up in Brizzy, down at the airport, I mean, it's very nostalgic for me hearing those names, and we don't see that anymore in Australia. Aviation's changed, as we all know. Did you think, or did you grow up in a family, whether it be from financial standpoint or just from what you thought you could achieve, that you could get to where you are now? Because you say that you're living your dream, you're so grateful for the job that you do. Is that because you really didn't think you'd ever get there?
Look, like my father, he's a butcher, and definitely one of my inspirations, as along with my mum. But we never really had money, or aviation definitely wasn't in our in our family, and but like I learned a lot about resilience, and also if you want it, you've got to make it happen. No one's going to do you any favors. You've got to make it happen yourself.
So as far as resilience, talk to that a little bit more. What was it about your childhood that forced you to learn that? Is it just through hard times?
I think it was possibly the times of the 70s, and obviously early 70s into the 80s, in the way that that I saw mum and dad, how when we had our our butcher shop, what it was like with a family business. You could only if you wanted something, you couldn't just go and grab it now and then pay for it later. Okay, you could with doing lay-bys at at Myers or something like that, but in operating a business like the butcher shop, and even for example, like I remember when mum and dad built our first house at what's known as McDowell now. We used to be called Bunyaville, and like our lounge was our outdoor furniture, and we had that for like 4 years until we could actually afford to buy a lounge and put carpet in, and so so I learnt from there. It's just work and effort. No one's going to give it to you, and but I've had some really good teachers along the way. My old manual arts teacher, who I'm still really good friends with, John Sorensen from Albany Creek High. He taught me a hell of a lot, and he's also probably one of the key people that has got me into the things, the thing that I do today is maintaining airplanes. And
You've mentioned a couple of times, sorry to cut you off, you've mentioned a couple of times that people aren't going to give it to you. You've just got to work hard. I certainly get the feeling, maybe you agree with me, that there are a lot of young people now that think things are supposed to be given to you, and they call out to the government, oh, it's unfair, we can't get ahead, blah, blah, blah. Maybe you have an opinion on it, maybe you don't. Do you think there's an element of that Aussie battler, hard yakker, you just got to get in and do the work, that's gone missing?
I think it's missing big time these days. You know, I think we're definitely in a very entitled age, and everyone, well, not everyone, but there are a lot around there now that want that instant gratification. They want it instantly. They want it now. They don't want to wait. Totally, and you know, you see that in, you know, like you see that in a lot of the video clips. You know, especially with some of the, you know, everything's about, you know, they're you know, they're dancing or singing in front of a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or a Lambo, and it's, you know, yeah, there's nothing wrong with dreaming and visions, and hey, this is, you know, I'd love to have a Bentley one day, but you know, like it's, not everyone can just sort of, you just can't snap your fingers and go like.
And it's also okay to accept that you're not going to have that.
Yeah.
You know, we don't all need to be the same. We don't all need to be rich. Would it be nice to have the financial means to have whatever you want?
Oh.
Of course it would be. I don't think there was anyone that would go, no, I'd much rather have no money and wonder where my next meal comes from. No one's wondering that, right? But the concept of, no, we should all be rich and we should all have whatever we want, the world just doesn't work that way.
Oh, definitely. It's, you know, it's you know, some people are more fortunate than others with some of the things that you know, or some of the opportunities that come along. But you know, if you always think that you're gonna, you know, that you're gonna win the lotto, or you're relying on a lotto win, or you know, I think you know, you're definitely, sadly mistaken. It's
and having that lotto win, inverted commas, it's a matter of perspective, really. You know, what's actually something worth aspiring to. Like, having a lot of money is great, but it doesn't necessarily make you happy. You mentioned that you went from high school and you had your teacher who put you on the path to becoming an aircraft engineer, which you are now, which sounds like maybe that was your lottery. Was going, hey, I don't have to just be a butcher like my dad, and not to be disparaging towards butchers, but if that's not what you want to do, and someone says, hey, have you thought about doing this? And to you, it seems like, oh, I could never do that. And yet here you are. How did that happen? How did that path go from being put on that path? What was the path walked to now you're a senior layman?
Well, you know, with, you know, basically, like, I know Dad really wanted me to take over our, you know, the business, and don't get me wrong, that was a fantastic opportunity, you know, to have that, you know, to be given, you know, to be given that if I wanted to take that opportunity. But, you know, I'd always had a passion for, you know, fixing my model cars, or, you know, but then at high school with John, and the things that he's, you know, the things that we did at school back then, you know, taught me skills that I just never ever, I guess, one never thought that I would ever have that opportunity to do those things, and it created some funny moments along the way, but you know, I really, you know, I really found that getting involved in, you know, like engineering or maintenance or fixing things, you know, there was, you know, you've taken this piece of timber or this piece of metal, you've fabricated it into something that's useful, and but with aviation, you know, as a kid, as I said, like, you know, watching these aeroplanes, you know, defy gravity, and just, thinking, wow, how cool's this? Um, you know, when that opportunity, sort of came about for my work experience at TAA, I was just like, a kid in a candy store. And
So what happened? What back then when you did work experience? What did they allow you to do? Did you crawl in and out of airplanes? And
yeah, that was the arrived aeroplane. Arrived airplanes. Learned how to marshal airplanes. Climbing into engines. Back then, it was TAA had just not long changed the name to Australian Airlines, and the Jetstream 31s had just arrived, and they were to do the regional flying. Um, you know, airplanes that around then were the DC-9 Fokker, the F-27. With the 727, and it was, and plus also there was also the Flying Doctor as well, which Australian or TN used to look after, and the workshops, the the guys that used to work in the in the workshop, like Harry Henriksen or Horse, he absolute master craftsman, but everyone just, it was, and it also was like, to me it was like a big family, and it still is, while it still is that today for me, even though things are a little bit more segmented, but for me it's still one big family, and every day I am at work. To me, it's like I get to play with planes and see my mates.
so yeah, well let's talk about that because you've been doing it for a while now. So you do your work experience, love it. Yeah, this is what I want to do. Did you do an apprenticeship or how did you get into it?
So basically an apprenticeship, which was for 4 years. And things are a little bit different these days, because whereas everything is sort of, you'll go and do your block at Tech, and then it's all competency based. But back when I did my apprenticeship, we did all facets of aviation. We piston engine, you worked on lighties, all your Group 20 stuff, working on, gas turbines, jets, pressurised airframes, even helis. So
Just for those who are non-aviation related, and if you happen to be watching, what we have behind us here are lighties. So anything under 5,700 kilos is a light airplane. Helicopters, obviously, not all airplanes have turbines. I don't know if you can see in the shot, but yeah, these are piston airplanes behind us. Turbines, J31s, turbines, and then most people listening who just go on their corner, so Jetstar flights, they're gas turbine engines.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Just for
clarification.
That's
because we'll have the jargon, but I want to make sure everyone understands.
It's to us in the aviation industry, it's we sometimes we forget to sort of peg it back to
and we abbreviate everything as well.
That's I never learnt so many abbreviations, and these days it's abbreviations on abbreviations. But so you did my 4 years, and that was fantastic in itself. Just with the things that that you learnt, especially around piston engines, learning about vapor cycle air conditioning, which was fantastic if you were doing work to your car as well, because it was a very on some of the systems on some of the airplanes, it was very similar to your car. And I was probably a kid that was probably average in physics and things like that, and now almost every day, it's become part of, it's like second nature, and just the way you might talk about anything to do with, a gas turbine engine. But yeah, there was a lot of work in that apprenticeship, just to get through the 4 years, and I had some, some great times during the apprenticeship as well.
Would it be fair to say that for anyone who, because I often will have kids message me and say, oh, I'd love to be a pilot, but I don't know if I'm smart enough, and I try and move them away from that mindset of, I'm not smart enough. Both because, well, who told you you're not smart enough? I mean, maybe you're not. I don't know you, but I would argue that it's got more to do with hard work and determination than it does with how smart you are. Some people just learn faster than other people, but if you give yourself the right amount of time and you're willing to never give up, even when you fail, and you will, you'll sit an exam and you'll fail. Everyone does. And just go, no, that's okay. All that's done is highlight where I have deficiencies in my knowledge. And you go back and you study and you try again and you try again. And if you never give up, you'll get there. But you've got to work hard.
100%. It's, again, it's not going to be handed to you. But if you want it and you put your head down and backside up and you work at it, the rewards will come. And
I just wanted to, because looking back, memory is always far more positive than the lived experience. And so it's very easy. Social media basically just brings memory into real life, but it's not real life. You always remember the really great things. I remember the Friday over beers with the boys when the shift was over, or, we fixed this plane, or we had a time frame. And you remember all the really cool things that happen. But you'd also have days where you made a mistake, your boss yelled at you, and you're like, or you failed an exam, I can't do this. And so a lot of people go, oh yeah, but he loved it all the time, so it was obviously really easy for him. I think people forget, no, like, we remember the good things, but everyone has their hard times.
Oh, for sure. Like, your hard times, you need to have those hard times. You need to have those failures, because that's what teaches you resilience. That's what teaches you to dust yourself off, get back up, get back in there. And, I had, I still remember, being told, by a teacher at school, you'll amount to nothing, you'll never get into the airlines, and, well, the rest's history. Yeah. If I had have sort of put my tail between my legs, head down, and just said, oh yeah, you're right, well, what I have today and where I am today, it's, wouldn't, I wouldn't have it. But and that's one of the things, as I said, like learning from my dad and my mum, and a lot of the people that I surround myself with, failing is not failing. Failing is learning. And, all you do is, when you fail, is you go, okay, look back at it, reflect on it, and go, you know what? Okay, this didn't work here, or this didn't work here. Well, how about I change my tact? And, learn from it. Because if you continue to do the same thing time and time again, you can't expect a different outcome.
That's right. So you've had, how long have you been doing engineering for now?
35 years. So
yeah. So I bet you got some great stories.
Yeah.
What are some that spring to mind of your career that you just go, that was my proudest moment, or something? We had this day out and this happened, and just love it.
Look, there's always, when you can, when you've managed to get, obviously, a jet, going, is always a, that's always a positive. That's a big win, even, with our recent trip out to Norfolk. You know, okay, you know, on our flight out, all you know, the only thing that I knew was that we had an issue with a screw, but there were so many different things that could have been, you know, that could have gone wrong, and you know, and it wasn't just for the fact of just putting that screw in. There were a couple of other issues that, you know, could have probably stopped you and Jeff from, you know, going to Sydney. But, you know, I looked at, you know, rather than just going, oh no, I don't have this, or, you know, you've got to, you know, you got to open yourself up and go, okay, well, how well, you know, what else can I do to keep this thing, you know, going? Because if we, you know, we go into it thinking, oh, well, can't go any further, you know, that's, yeah, you know, sometimes we get that, but, you know, some of my, you know, some of my greatest moments are the people that I meet every day, you know, or you know, and some of the friends. That's what I draw on for my energy to come in, you know, day in, day out. The guys that I work with, and yeah, and I put all of that together, and the negative, or the negatives that you might have had through your years, just become so small that, you know, you still remember them, but, you know, the overall is just a massive positive.
Well, I've only known you a short time. As you said, we met on that Norfolk recovery. Have you always been this positive, or has this come out of a low and you've gone, no, I purposely want to change my life and make things better?
Look, I've always tried to be very positive. My mum, you know, she was always a very positive lady, and Mum would always say, you know, don't worry, sweetheart, something good is just around the corner. You know, keep that smile on your face, and I've always tried to maintain, you know, that. Sometimes it does, you know, it has been hard, and sometimes there are moments where you feel like, you know, you've failed, and you feel, you know, a little bit down, you know, whether it be in your personal life, in your, you know, in your work life, but, you know, and then sometimes, like I know I've got some very good, you know, close friends that I'll have a chat with, and they've helped me sort of bring things back into perspective. And we all, you know, my group of friends, we all sort of lean on each other, especially when, you know, times are not so, you know, flush, so to speak. And but we also remind ourselves where we've come from, what we've done to get ourselves to where we are, and then, you know, that gives us a, you know, a recharge, you know, to sort of go, well, you know what, it's not that bad. Let's get into it, and I try to, you know, I try to put a smile on people's face when I meet people, when I deal with people. I try to put a smile on their face and have that time together, or that moments together, as a good experience. And if someone is feeling a little low, try to lift them.
And I love that about you, because that was certainly my first observation of you. And I think most people listening would agree that we live in a world where it's very easy to be negative. People focus on the negative. So it's nice to have someone like yourself out there actively trying to make things positive for other people. You touched on your group of mates and how I was really not, talking it through. I mean, you can work out it's not as bad as you think it is. You said a couple of times perspective and gratitude. We talked about this briefly when we were flying out to Norfolk. I feel like they're undervalued.
Oh, extremely undervalued, and you know, a lot of I think these days people, you listen to people, and they'll have a go at it once, and then it's like the world's going to collapse. And they, and they're not, you know, um, you know, and they might be, they also might be quite, quite young as well, and they've got all of this, ahead of them if they actually sort of pull back, look from outside the fishbowl, and go, well, you know what, I've got, plenty of time ahead. I can go back in. I can try again, and I think, yeah, how people look at it. It's a big part. And it's a shame that you see young ones or even people our age, they just sort of default to the negative rather than actually look at the positives. And the other thing too is life is short. It is so short, and we've got to make every day count. And you know what, you're gonna have failures, but those failures are gonna help you help you lift. And the other thing too is if you see someone down, don't kick them, or don't leave them down. Put a smile on their face, lift them, give some some encouragement. And and it doesn't matter what it is. If someone's someone wants to get into a job that's probably a hard job to get into, never say never. And that's one of the things. That's probably one of the best bits of advice I was ever given, was never say never.
It's not never, it's just not now.
Yeah.
Do you find that you're having these sorts of conversations with any of the young apprentices now?
Yeah, I do. And look, I still remember even, some of the guys, coming up that have just recently got their licenses. And, and I still remember, saying to them, never say never. Don't say that it's not going to happen. And, because they felt that they were just going to, stay as an AME. And, and as I said to them, I said, look, never say never, but prepare yourself now so that when they do pull the trigger to train and put the people on, put licensed engineers on, you're ready to go. You can throw your hand up, and and it's and it's so pleasing to see those guys have done that, and and that are now licensed, and and hopefully those boys can pass that on to the next generation as well, because we're just custodians of our trade and of our industry, and we need to be able to pass that on, because knowledge is not power. Knowledge should be shared. And because one day I'm not going to be here, and but we need, that's how we need to even good values and manners and things like that. The only way that's going to carry on is by passing it down. And
Yeah, I would argue that a lot of the most important things, especially in our industry, because it's such a hands-on, practical industry, you don't learn from reading a book. The book builds you the base, and then you actually learn the trade by doing it hands-on. And so those things that you learn through 35 years of doing it, if you don't pass that on to the next generation, they've then got to struggle through everything to learn what you already learned, which you could have just saved them the trouble by passing it on.
Exactly. Look, some people, some people are a little bit resistant to wanting to accept advice.
It goes both ways, for sure.
And I've had so many people there, whether I know this, I know that, and look, you can't, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. But sometimes they learn, sometimes they don't, and and look, I'm not going to force anything onto anyone. If they if they need to have some willingness there to be able to go, hey, look, can you help, or they need to be able to that little bit of perspective to go, yeah, well, maybe if I really want this, maybe I need to look at listening and learning, but and I look at it, even myself as a as a kid, I was always a larger set kid, heavy, and got to the point where I was I had that much weight on me. I was like 156 kilos, and and I'd always tried diets and things like that, and and I'd lose weight, then I'd put more weight back on, and but I got to the point where I've gone, you know what, I need to do something, but I need to learn how to do it, and how to do it properly. Admittedly, I had some good people around me to help me with some weight loss surgery that I had, but that was only going to get me so far. To maintain that weight loss and myself going forward, well, that was all going to be me.
There's a lot of really critical steps to weight loss, and I sort of only jump in excitedly because I've trained all my life. I was a PT once upon a time, so this is sort of an area that I know a lot about. And a lot of people forget that weight loss is more than just getting rid of it. Keeping it off is also hard. Keeping it off is easier than losing it. Simple math equation, if you want to lose weight, you need to have less calories coming in than you have going out. The deficit is how you lose weight. If you want to maintain weight, same in, same out. So you can actually have that little bit more to eat and maintain the weight. But the problem is a lot of people get so exhausted losing the weight that by the time they're done, they don't have the willpower to resist anymore. Hence, they put it back on. As you said, you went through those cycles of lose it, gain it, lose it, gain it. And quite often, you'd put more on than you lost. So was there a particular moment or an incident where you just thought, enough's enough?
I was on the 787 training, and back in 2018, and I was I was in the shower, and I had a panic attack, and I've just gone, I can't, I was struggling to breathe, and at that particular time too, I had plantar fasciitis in both feet. I could hardly walk, so I was just, I was, I was a basket case as far as health went, and and I guess the big thing was I needed to also start taking some of my advice of listening to myself and making some change, and it wasn't going to happen just with a pill. And I looked at what I'd done previously. As I said, I had some good friends around me who were doctors, and we discussed the pros and the cons of the different surgeries, of what to do, what not to do. And then, but when I chose the weight loss surgery, the sleeve surgery, the process was to start putting my head in the right place, because if you don't have the head in the right place, and if and you're ready for it, you can have the surgery and just revert. You'll just revert back to your old ways. But if you start, you put your head in that right place and start thinking how what it's going to be like, and operating in that mode. So I put myself, I put my head in the right place. Started that probably 2-3 months before surgery, so that when I had the surgery, I was already in that zone, and it was just continue on, maintain that, and and then just started. The best bits of advice I had from my doctors were, get into your exercise straight away, and just always try to just basically, even with with your food and things like that, always look at make good conscious decisions. And and that grew, and started riding my bike, and then a friend of mine introduced me to to running, and I I never ever thought that I would ever be a runner, and I was I like the old me wouldn't have even sort of run 2 meters for a McDonald's voucher. Now I'll run 42.5 k's for a banana and an orange.
So that's quite that. Okay, so that's quite an arc. Well, I guess we'll fast forward through the weight loss process. But how much did you lose?
Lost 80 kilos.
So I'm 79 kilos. So you lost more than I weigh altogether, which is that's just an outrageous amount of weight. And all credit to you. That is a spectacular result. So good on you for doing that. But I want to talk a little bit about, because I feel like the underlying theme of our chat so far has been hard work. If you really want something, you got to go get it. So you've done the hard work of losing 80 kilos, which a lot of people can't do. And you've done that, which is commendable. And most people go, great, I've achieved what I wanted to do. Now I just got to stay healthy. You've gone, no, that's not enough. Now I want to run marathons. Did it start with, that's what I want to do and I'm going to work towards it? Or was it, I just want to move, and it eventually evolved over time? Like the first time you put runners on with your mate, as you mentioned, and you went out for a run, how far did you run? How did it feel? Did you love it straight away? Or like me, sort of go, I hate running. Why am I doing this? I enjoy it now, but when I first started, it was not a good feeling.
Yeah, well, when, basically, when my first run was basically 2.5 k's, and I didn't even think that I could run, half a k, but it was it was a very slow jog. And I still remember my first park run. I did the 5Ks in just a fraction over an hour, and I think my PB at the moment for park run is 24:10. And now I'm 120 odd park runs into it, and I love and live it, and for park run, and my friends that I've made out of parkrun, phenomenal. And but as I said, it started off with that 2.5 Ks, and then we, I hadn't sort of run more than 2.5 Ks until another friend of mine. I actually went to New York to support her. She was doing the New York half, and like she was actually going to do the New York half, London half, and the Paris as well, and all three. And anyway, I met Diana across in New York, and literally the day we landed, I landed in New York. They canned it because of COVID, but we'll still maintain some training. We did some training, and we're running through Central Park and all that. But eventually, I just started to think, how cool would it be, like running, running through a city like this, seeing the sights, and that planted sort of the seed in my head, and progressively was doing the 5 Ks for parkrun, but then started doing 10s, and then 15s, and then, but I'd never run anything more than 15, and then the opportunity came about to do the half marathon in New York, and I thought, how cool is this? My first half marathon, in New York City. And and as I said, at that particular point, from the start line, I still remember talking to a mate of mine, Matt from Baltimore, and we were just sort of just chatting before the run, and he said to me, mate, he said, trust me, he said, once you do your first half, you're going to want to do a full. And I said, oh mate, nah, definitely not. Definitely not. I said 42 Ks, definitely not. And let me tell you this, on the final part coming through into Central Park of that half marathon, I'd already said to myself, yeah, I'm going to do the full. And later that year, my first full marathon was the New York City Marathon. And yeah, for me to have two firsts in New York for my first half and first full, and I just love it. And and I've had people come up to me and go, but how do you do it? And I go, well, it's actually quite easy. You put your foot over the start line, and in 42.5 Ks, you put your other foot over the other finish line. And whatever happens in between, you have fun. And that's what I do. The crowd, the energy that you draw from the crowd, you're becoming, sort of just coming off the Queensborough Bridge, or, everyone's high-fiving you, all the kids are high-fiving you, they're, giving you lollies, or, screaming out your name, because I've got my nickname when I run, it's Just Trent, and, and they're yelling out, go Just Trent, and that energy is, is phenomenal. And, you go through times there where you go through times there, it gives you a lot of time to think, but, and sometimes, you'd be running along and you might feel a niggle here and there, but for your mental focus, it's phenomenal. Like that niggle, you think about something else and you put that niggle out of your head. And, I think about, for example, I hate with my gel packets. I don't like throwing them on the roadway. I like to put them in a bin. And anyway, I stopped. You know, I saw this lady in Brooklyn, and she had a little coffee stall. And I said, "Oh, do you mind if I put my put my wrapper in your bin?" And she goes, "Oh, you're a runner." And I go, "Yeah, yeah." And she goes, "Oh, would you like a coffee and a cookie to run with?" And they're the moments that I think of and love, and that, and and when times, when it does get tough, you just, you just think about all of the good things of why you're doing it and why you want to do it. And in last year's New York Full, I had, my right ankle go out on me at the 24-mile mark. And I just tried to work out a way of how I was still going to, keep running. And I just sort of tried different things, worked it out, finished the marathon, and I still finished an hour faster than the year before. And and as I said, that it teaches you the resilience, focus, and no one's, like, the easiest thing was to give up and to jump back on the sweet bus and and then head back to Central Park. But and I've made some fantastic friends all around the world.
The running community is really great like that because you all have a similar mindset. So you understand that the person next to you is probably thinking the same thing as you. Randomly coming up and talking to a stranger is what you do. That's an accepted thing. So no one's going to look at you sideways and go, "Why are you talking to me?" Because you sort of, I would argue from the races I've ever done, people are sort of hoping the person next to them will talk to them.
Yeah.
Because then it gets that conversation. "Oh, what are you?" "Oh, I'm from Baltimore." I'm like, "Oh, cool,
Yeah.
cool." The transformation for you is so massive from being overweight to being a marathon runner. And you're right, the easy path, and a lot of people like to take the easy path in life. I heard the comedian Jimmy Carr make a really great quote. He said, "Everything that you want in life is on the other side of everything you're not willing to do." And I thought, that's so true.
Yeah.
And I think most people know, even if they choose to not believe it or they choose to sort of ignore it, block it out, I think most people know the things or the areas in their life they need to change. But they're often the hard things, and so they just pretend it's not a problem, or they'll make an excuse. Like, let's say weight loss, for example. "Oh, I don't have a problem. I could lose weight tomorrow if I wanted to, but I'm happy the way they am." But they're not happy, but they're just trying to convince themselves that they are. If that's the case for someone listening, or even what would be better is someone who genuinely wants to lose weight, but just have not been able to get the motivation to do it. As someone who has now done it, do you have, you obviously know what worked for you, and it may not be the case for everybody, but do you have something that you could share, some wisdom from your journey? Because it was like losing 80 kilos is not an easy feat, even with surgery. Advice that you would give people to go, "Hey, hold on to this. This will help you get through. And when times get low, and they will, and you want to give up, you want to go eat that pastry or that donut or whatever, stick to this." Is it like incremental goals, or is it a long-term goal, or what is it that really you think would help most people?
It's, one thing I was always taught, and this was, I guess, my father taught me this, as a kid, playing golf. We all want to get a hole in one. That's the ultimate dream. But the likelihood of achieving that straight away, pretty remote. But as he said, he just said, you play a little bit at a time, chew a little bit at a time, but just treat as you get closer to the green, you're just aiming for a bigger bucket. And then you just, and then once you've hit that, you then narrow the bucket. And so you start narrowing where you want to be and where you want to end up, or the direction that you want to go. And, my closest mate, Mark, his bit of advice, we've known each other for well over 40 years, and best bit of advice he had given me was, if the opportunity presents itself, present the opportunity. And so you need, it's up to you to direct it into that. But and how you do that, but just small goals, and those you knock those small goals off, and those small goals eventually become bigger goals, and those bigger goals are then a small goal to your next goal, and where you where you want to end up. But surrounding yourself with good people, positive people, that's key as well. Don't let anyone ever tell you you can't do anything, because that's if you believe that, that's the wrong bit of advice.
Yeah, well, I mean, people who have listened to the podcast know that I'm a Christian. I don't try and hide that. And one thing that we speak about in Christianity is that words have power. And as a kid, I never really understood it. But it's true that if you tell yourself, I can't do this, or if someone says you can't do this, and you believe them, well, then you can't do it. You've got to say to yourself, I can do this. And if people are telling you that you can't, you need to move away, because that's toxic, and it will drag you down.
Oh, for sure. And that's what I love about, for example, even, our parkrun group. My mate Phil, he's, how we met at parkrun. I never thought that anyone was ever keeping an eye on me, as to what I was doing. And then, Phil comes up to me one day and he goes, "Oh, geez, mate, you were motoring today." And I didn't know that. And then Abby, who was with him, Abs comes up and says, "Oh, who are you running with today?" And I said, "Oh, just me, just Trent." And she goes, "That's your nickname from now on." So that's how I got Just Trent. But what I love about our group is how we support each other, and and how we help sort of develop each other, push each other as well. Like Phil pushes me to new levels that that I love. He'll we'll be we go to do a run, we'll go and do a half marathon, and he'll say, "You want to do a PB today?" I go, "Yeah, of course I do." And and I still remember like my first sub-2 for a half, and Phil wasn't actually meant to run that day. He wasn't going to be in Brisbane, but a friend of ours wasn't running, so he ran with me on that, and and we knew what our targets were, and he great pace, and and we both push each other, and even as we're running along, and we knew where we were, and he said, "Let's not waste it, let's keep going, take a teaspoon of cement, let's harden up and keep going." And I think we ended up as a 1 hour. I think it was 1 hour 54. We didn't just beat the 2 hours. We beat it by like a few minutes, and so anything's possible. It's just how much how hard you want it, and you want to work for it. And if I look at it, even if it's raining, that doesn't stop me training, or that doesn't stop me from going for a run. You know, like if you stop yourself going, well, it's raining outside, or it's too hot, all you're doing is just throwing an excuse up. And the moment you throw an excuse up, you're already on that downhill slope. You know. Oh, for sure, mate, for sure, and it's yeah, you know, like, but for me, the positives I draw out of us training in the heat and the weather is when I go and run my marathons overseas, I'm actually running sometimes in cooler climates, and that, like, you know, that helps me tremendously. Or when, for example, like London last year was, you know, the temperature changed by 5 degrees. We were supposed to have a much cooler day, but we ended up with a much warmer day. And you know, and I still remember with 10K to go, I'd actually started to, you know, to cramp, but I drew on a lot of, you know, the things that, you know, we do here, and, you know, made sure that I was just getting some additional electrolyte in, and yeah, you know, finished, and, you know, as I said, yeah, the easiest thing is to give up. But
I get the feeling that a passion of yours, other than the positivity, which you've already said is a cornerstone of who you are and what you want to bring to the world, is hard work and determination. You've seen so much of it in your own life, and you've seen the success that it's given you, and you, as we've also discussed, young people perhaps don't have enough of it. I get the feeling that perhaps that's another significant core of you that you want to see more of in the world, because you know the amount of people that could fix their lives if they just applied that.
Yeah, 100%. You know, you can, again, looking outside the fishbowl, you know what all they need to do to make it happen for them, and, you know, and I do, you know, and I totally get it. It's you know, where some people, they just don't believe in themselves, but and there was a point for me that I didn't, you know, I guess I lacked a bit of confidence in myself, and I think that was, you know, in, you know, sort of where I was a, you know, bigger chap, or, and but yeah, drawing on all of that energy, putting the head in the right place, you know, I started to, you know, to back myself and go, you know what, I can do this, you know, and that's what, you know, that's what people need, is, you know, believing in themselves, you know, not in a cocky sense, but, you know, just in a good, confident sense that, you know what, I can do this. It's gonna be hard, but you know what, nothing's easy, but the rewards will, you know, will pay off. And, you know, and when someone tells you that you can't do something, you know, you know, like, as I mentioned to you earlier, like for me, when someone says to me, you can't do something, that immediately says you can do it. And then you know, I am fortunate. I've got the passion in there that says to myself, you will do it. And, you know,
And the more wins that you have, the stronger that positive voice gets, right? You have one and you have that, oh yeah, that was pretty good. And so then you do it again. And as you sort of, it becomes this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you do it, the more you go, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do this. And then you get to the point where where you're so successful in what you've achieved that you're overflowing. And so you're going, oh, I've got to give this to everyone else around me. Everyone's got to get this.
Yeah, it's, you know, again, it's like, you know, like I would rather share positivity than, keep it all to myself, because, like, we should be able to share anything. We should be able to share knowledge. It's if we can't do good things to help other people, why are we here,
mate? And that is the perfect culmination of today's conversation. I think we live in this age of me, consumerism, and all the stuff that I want. But if you look at the world and what actually makes the world better, it's what you can do for other people. And I think you will have found, I've certainly found in my life, that the more generous you are to other people, the better you feel. It's almost selfish to be generous, because you go, this is going to make me feel better by doing this for other people.
Yeah, look, I get a buzz out of helping people, like, because, if it's to help them realize their dream, or help facilitate what they want to do. Like, if we can't do that, what's the point of being on this earth?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Trent, I've already taken an hour of your time. So what I like to do to finish every episode is I have a question. It's a heavy question that I haven't armed you with, so you just got to think on the spot. But it is, with everything that you know and everything that you've achieved in your life, what makes you hopeful for the future?
Look, what makes me hopeful for the future? I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. And if I can help people, if, ultimately I have to help myself, but to help myself, that helps me help others. And that's, and I'm confident that, that I want to keep, carrying it on and helping help as many people, and, whether it be weight loss, whether it be someone in aviation, or, just guiding someone in that right direction. I'm definitely confident in maintaining that.
Well, I think I love that answer. I think that perfectly sums up everything we've talked about today. And I hope more people will take on board the things that you've talked about. I think the only way for this world to get better is for more people to help the world, the world around them, I guess. Quite often, and this is sort of a metaphor towards your weight loss, where you said, you just do a couple little steps, and those little steps go to the next big step, which becomes the next. People often just look at the end and go, that's too big, I can't do that. And whether it be weight loss, whether it be running goals, whether it be just trying to make the world a better place, start by just speaking to the people around you. And if those people start to catch on to what you're doing, then you've now got a community of people that face it, like your parkrun group. And it just sort of goes out and out. And if you can keep paying it forward and helping people around you together, the more of us that do it, the better the world's going to be.
Yeah, look, paying it forward is huge. It's, whether it's, you're at the cafe and, you see someone scratching around, for a dollar or two, and I think I even mentioned to you the other day, I was having coffee, with a couple of friends, and, they're scratching around for the, hey, what's, they're going to hopefully help someone else, next time. And that, or whether you can, lead them in the right direction with a contact, to get into the airlines or flying. And, even, some of my good friends that I've, at the Aero Club, the young diploma pilots, watching them come through and, having chats with them and, giving them some some insight, and just to sort of also let them know, hey, look, in where you are in life, especially as you might fly the airplane, but you are a small piece of the jigsaw puzzle. We need to, encompass everyone. That's what makes what makes the big picture. And I just, you bite small and then just, but and then get bigger and bigger, and you can, you can achieve anything. And it's just, it just comes down to attitude and mindset. And it's, and, I still remember my mum saying, you use less muscles, smiling and having a good mindset. So, so why wouldn't you want to keep people, on the up?
Beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you very much for talking with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I love having these sorts of conversations.
Oh, mate, I've loved every moment of it. As I said, mate, loved our chat, heading out to Norfolk, just, love it that we have that opportunity to work together, because, and even just, listening to your journey, coming into Qantas, and, and as I recall you saying to me, you were told you'll never get into Qantas, and the rest's history for yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking with me. We'll leave it there. For everyone listening, I really hope you got something out of that. So many great characteristics from Trent, and I really hope that you can apply it to your life. If you're listening and you're struggling, feel free to reach out to me. And if you're willing, Trent, I can put people in touch with you. If they just need, if there's no one in their life for that positive influence, I can definitely put people in touch with you as well. All right, everyone, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you on the very next episode of Rule of Reason.